I haven't slept properly for 16 years. Not since that weekend in Ashford. Not since I learned that some doors once opened never truly close. Not since I understood that the world we see is only a thin membrane stretched over something vast and hungry, and that sometimes, just sometimes, that membrane tears. My name is Genesis, and I'm 26. I work as a data analyst in Portland now. A job specifically chosen because it requires no imagination, no intuition, just cold numbers and predictable patterns. My therapist says I've built my entire adult life around the need for control, for certainty, for things that can be measured and verified. She's right, of course. What she doesn't know, what I've never told her, is why this is the story I could never tell. Not to therapists, not to friends, not even to myself in the silent hours before dawn, when the memories climb their way out of wherever I've buried them. But something changed last week. I received a letter, forwarded through 3 different addresses, written in a handwriting I recognized instantly despite the years, Minerva. The letter contained only 7 words and a photograph. It's happening again. We need to talk. The photograph showed a house. Not that house, they had moved out of that place a few months after that weekend, but the expression in my cousin's eyes in the window's reflection that she had photographed was identical to the look I had seen that night 16 years ago. That look of someone who understands they are being hunted by something that shouldn't exist. So I'm writing this down. Everything, every detail I can pull from the locked rooms in my memory, even the ones that don't make sense, even the ones that contradict each other. Because I've learned that in stories like this, the contradictions are often the most honest parts. Let me take you back to 2010, to an October weekend when I was 10, and still believed that adults could protect you from anything. Part 1, The Crossing. The thing about my Uncle David's family is that they always lived with ghosts. Not metaphorically. Not the way people say a house is haunted because it's old and makes settling noises at night. I mean that they lived with presences, entities, intelligences that existed in the spaces between what we call real and what we pretend doesn't exist to preserve our sanity. My cousin, Isabella, who was 14 that year, grew up hearing footsteps in empty hallways. Minerva, 16, had learned to sleep through whispered conversations in unoccupied rooms. Orlando, 20 and studying engineering at Portland State University, once told me, in a moment of rare honesty, that he had stopped being surprised by anything after age 7, when he watched a shadow person sit at the foot of his bed for 3 hours. Just watching him. They never called priests. They never tried to cleanse their houses, or burn sage or any of the things you see in movies. Uncle David, my mother's brother, had a philosophy about it that I didn't understand as a child, but came to appreciate in its brutal pragmatism. You can't fight what you don't understand, and you can't understand what shouldn't exist. So you make peace with it or you go crazy. My Aunt Rachel, perpetually exhausted, perpetually worried, simply nodded when he said this, as if he had suggested they learn to live with a leaking roof, instead of something fundamentally opposed to the laws of physics. I loved staying with them anyway. Maybe it was because my own house felt empty after my dad left. Maybe it was because my mum worked double shifts at the hospital, and my brother Marcus was 17 and wanted nothing to do with his little sister. Or maybe, and this is the part that still bothers me, maybe it was because some part of me even then was drawn to it, to the anomaly, to the spaces where reality grew thin. Every Friday, like clockwork, Uncle David would pick me up from Cascade Elementary School in his beat-up green pickup truck. I'd toss my backpack into the bed, climb into the cab that always smelled like coffee and sawdust, and we'd drive the 20 minutes from Ashford proper to their house in the outskirts, where the Douglas firs grew so dense that the roads remained shaded even at midday. That particular Friday in October, the one that split my life into before and after, started like all the others. "How was school, kid?" Uncle David asked, merging into traffic. "Fine," I said, which was what I always said. I was a quiet, observant child, the kind teachers describe as thoughtful when they mean odd. I had friends, but not close ones. I preferred books to people. I preferred listening to talking. My mom worried about that. Uncle David never worried. "The girls are excited you're coming," he said. "Isabella's planning something, I think. She'll probably make you watch all those high school musicals she loves. I smiled. Isabella and I had a routine. She'd try to get me interested in whatever teenage thing she was currently obsessed with. I'd politely tolerate it, and eventually we'd end up doing something else entirely. It was comfortable. Uncle David? I asked as we turned onto Highway 242, the road that would take us deeper into the woods. Yeah? Has anything strange happened at the new house? He was quiet for a moment. His hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. Why do you ask? I don't know. Isabella sounded weird on the phone yesterday. Another pause. Then, it's a new place. Takes time to adjust. You know how it is. But I knew how it was, and that wasn't what I meant. There was a quality to the silence in their previous house that I had learned to recognize. A texture to it, as if the air itself was holding its breath. I had felt it before. That sensation of being watched by something without eyes. And when Isabella called the night before to confirm I was coming, I heard that same quality in her voice, as if she were choosing her words carefully, because someone else was listening. The new house was at the end of Mirrow Creek Road, a street that wasn't on most maps because it wasn't technically a real street, just a private drive that served 3 properties, theirs being the farthest from the main highway. Uncle David had bought it for a steal. He'd said proudly when they moved in 3 weeks earlier, a foreclosure the previous owners left in a hurry, even left half their furniture behind. Why would they leave furniture? My mother had asked, suspicious in her practical way. Maybe they couldn't afford movers, Uncle David said. Their loss, our gain. Now as we drove up the gravel driveway and the house appeared through the trees, I felt something coiled tight in my stomach. It was a nice house, objectively. 2 stories, cream siding, dark blue shutters, a wide porch that wrapped around the front. The kind of place that should look welcoming. It didn't. Looks nice, right? Uncle David said, and there was something in his voice that suggested he was trying to convince himself as much as me. Yeah, I said. Nice. The front door opened before we even got out of the truck, and Isabella came skipping down the porch steps, her dark hair flying behind her. She wore ripped jeans and an oversized sweater, and she was smiling that way she did, wide and genuine and infectious. Finally, she shrieked, pulling me into a hug before I'd even closed the truck door. I'm so bored. Minerva's been unpacking boxes all day like some kind of organizing robot. Someone has to. Minerva's voice called from the doorway. She stood with her arms crossed, wearing paint-stained overalls, her lighter brown hair pulled back in a messy bun. She was the practical one, the responsible one, the one who inherited Uncle David's stoicism and Aunt Rachel's constant worry. Unlike some people who just shove everything into random closets. It's called organized chaos, Isabella retorted, but she was still smiling. Come on, Jen, I'll show you my new room. It's huge. It fits like 3 of you inside. As I followed her inside, Uncle David called out behind us, Your aunt and I are leaving in about an hour. Convention in Seattle. Back Sunday afternoon. You kids be good for Orlando. When are we not good? Isabella said innocently, and Uncle David chuckled. But I noticed Aunt Rachel standing in the kitchen doorway, and she wasn't laughing. She watched us with that look she sometimes had, that mix of love and regret and something else that I was too young to name, but would later recognize as guilt. As if she wanted to warn us about something, but didn't know how. Genesis, she said softly, come here a second. I walked over to her and she knelt to my level, her hands on my shoulders. Up close, I could see the dark circles under her eyes, the new lines around her mouth. If anything feels wrong this weekend, I mean anything, you call me immediately. Okay? I don't care what time it is. Okay, I said, confused. But we'll be fine. Orlando's here. Something flickered across her face. I know you'll be fine. I need you to promise me. I promise. She pulled me into a quick, tight hug, and when she let go, I saw her quickly wipe her eyes. I should have understood then. I should have recognized that gesture for what it was. A mother saying goodbye to a child she wasn't sure she'd see again, not unchanged at least. But I was 10 and I was excited about the weekend ahead. And I didn't yet understand that there are some goodbyes that echo forward through time, that you can feel their weight decades later, even if you didn't recognize them at the moment. Isabella pulled me upstairs, chattering about the house, about school, about some boy named Tyler, who had asked for her number, and how she gave him a fake one because he had the vibe of someone who would become a podcast guy. Her room was at the end of the upstairs hall next to Minerva's, with Uncle David and Aunt Rachel's master bedroom at the opposite end. The room was indeed huge, with large windows overlooking the backyard and the forest beyond. She had decorated it in her typical style: string lights, posters of bands I didn't recognize, a collection of crystals on her dresser that she insisted had good energy, despite not believing in anything supernatural beyond what she couldn't help but experience. "So," she said, flopping onto her bed, "what do you want to do tonight? Orlando's supposedly in charge, but you know him. He'll disappear into the basement with his drums and forget we exist." "Doesn't matter to me," I said, settling onto the inflatable mattress she'd set up next to her bed. It was already made up with blankets and pillows, and I felt a surge of affection for my cousin, who always made sure I felt at home. From somewhere below us came the characteristic crash and thunder of drumming. Orlando was already at it, practicing a beat that resonated through the house's structure. Isabella rolled her eyes. "See, I told you. Thank goodness Dad soundproofed that room or we'd never sleep." But as she said it, the drumming stopped abruptly. We waited for it to resume. It didn't. Isabella said. "Maybe he actually is going to hang out with us. Or maybe he broke something." Minerva's voice came from the doorway. She had changed out of her work clothes into sweatpants and a t-shirt. Dad texted. "They're leaving now. Said to let you know there's money on the counter for food." "We're getting tacos," Isabella said immediately. "Orlando." "We're getting tacos," she yelled toward the stairs. A distant "okay" floated up from somewhere below, and that's how it began. With something as mundane as a debate over getting tacos or pizza, with Orlando's voice calling up from downstairs, with Minerva already calculating how much money we would need and whether we should grab extra for tomorrow's breakfast. Normal. Completely, totally normal. I think that's what makes what came next so much worse. The way horror doesn't announce itself with thunder and lightning. It just begins, in the spaces between ordinary moments, in the pause between heartbeats, in the shadow that stands in the corner that you could have sworn wasn't there a second ago. The sun was setting as we piled into Orlando's car, an old Honda Civic with broken air conditioning and an impressive collection of fast food wrappers in the back seat. Isabella decided to stay behind to shower, since we'd only be gone 30 minutes. "Lock up with the remote," Orlando told her, handing her the small black device that controlled the house's electronic locks. "And answer your phone if we call." "Yes, Dad," Isabella said, rolling her eyes. But she took the remote, and I watched her look back at the house as we drove away, a flicker of something crossing her face. The taco stand was in town, a small family-run place that made everything fresh. We ordered enough food for a small army. Minerva insisted on getting extras just in case, and drove back just as total darkness fell. The house looked different in the dark. I couldn't identify what had changed, but as we pulled into the driveway, something about it felt wrong. The windows were lit from within, warm and inviting, but they looked like eyes watching us arrive. The porch light cast strange shadows across the front door. "I texted Isabella we're here," Minerva said, frowning at her phone. 5 minutes ago." No answer. "She's probably still in the shower," Orlando said, but he was frowning too. We waited. 2 minutes, 3, 5. "This is ridiculous," Minerva muttered, calling her sister. I watched as the phone rang and rang, eventually going to voicemail. "Isabella, we are literally standing outside." "Open the damn door." That's when we saw her, in the master bedroom balcony window, the one overlooking the front of the property. Through the glass and the partially open white vertical blinds, we could see a silhouette, wet hair, towel around her body. Phone in hand, "Isabella." Finally, Minerva sighed, already grabbing the food bags. "Isa, open up!" But Isabella didn't move. She just stood there behind the glass, her hand holding the blind, looking down toward us. "What is she doing?" I asked. "Being dramatic," Minerva said, but her voice had an edge of irritation. "Isa, I'm hungry." It was Orlando who noticed first. He had gotten out of the car and was looking up at the balcony window, and when he spoke, his voice had a strange quality. Flat and careful, like someone trying not to spook a wild animal. "Minerva," he said quietly. "Who is next to her?" My stomach dropped before I even looked, before I even saw it, because in the window right next to Isabella, so close their shoulders were touching, was another shape, taller, wider, completely dark, as if light simply refused to touch it. And as we watched, that thing raised a hand, and it waved, slowly, deliberately. The long fingers arching and closing in a gesture of greeting that somehow felt more like a threat, more like a promise. Minerva's phone was in her hands dialing, and I heard her scream into the device, "Isabella, who are you with? Isabella, get out of there!" In the window, Isabella finally moved. She pressed her forehead against the glass, eyes shut, and even from that distance I could see she was crying. And the thing next to her kept waving, waving, waving. Orlando was already scaling the gate, his foot finding purchase on the ornamental iron, muscles straining as he pulled himself up. Minerva was screaming into the phone, yelling at Isabella to run now, but Isabella was frozen, pressed against that glass like a butterfly pinned in a display box. And then the thing closed the blind. Both disappeared from view. No, Minerva shrieked and started climbing the gate too, but she was wearing sandals and kept slipping, and I just stood there on the gravel driveway, 10 years old and understanding for the first time in my life that adults couldn't fix everything, that there were things in the world against which force and love and intent meant nothing. I heard Orlando reach the balcony. I heard the sound of glass shattering. I heard the house alarm start to blare, a high-pitched electronic scream that ripped through the night air. And then silence. The alarm stopped. The gate clicked and started to slide open. Minerva grabbed my hand, her fingers like steel around mine, and pulled me through the now open driveway, up the porch steps, to the front door, which was unlocked. "Waiting? Stay here," she ordered me, her voice trembling. "Jan, you stay right here, got it?" But I didn't. I couldn't. I followed her through the door, into the entrance hall with its polished wood floor and its walls painted a cheerful yellow that somehow looked wrong. Too cheerful, like a smile on a dead face. "Orlando!" Minerva screamed up the stairs. "Orlando, is everything okay?" Her voice echoed. The house caught it and threw it back at us, distorted, just a degree off true. Then his head appeared at the top of the stairs. Messy hair, pale face, but his voice was calm when he spoke. "It's fine. Come on up." It wasn't fine. I knew it. Minerva knew it. But we went up anyway, because what else do you do? When the impossible happens, you keep walking. You keep climbing the stairs. You keep pretending the world still makes sense. The master bedroom was large and tastefully arranged. King-sized bed, antique dresser, those balcony doors that led out to the balcony where we had seen my cousin and the thing next to her. The doors were open now, shattered glass twinkling on the rug, the night breeze moving through the curtains like breath. Isabella was sitting on the bed, curled up in a bathrobe, wet hair dripping onto her shoulders. She was staring at her hands in her lap, and she didn't look up when we entered. "Isa," Minerva said softly, moving closer. "Baby, are you okay?" "What happened?" For a long moment, Isabella didn't answer. Then, in a voice so low I almost didn't hear it, there was nobody there. What? When I turned around, there was nobody. Just me. Minerva and Orlando exchanged a look. One of those sibling looks that contains entire conversations, entire histories, a whole alphabet of meaning that only those who grew up together can understand. "Right," Orlando said finally. "Okay, let's all go downstairs. Let's eat. Let's forget this, and..." "We can't forget," Isabella said, and she finally looked up. Her eyes were red from crying, but there was something else in them, something that made me take a step back, because it's going to happen again. It always happens again, and she was right. God, she was so right. We ate tacos at the dining room table, nobody talking. The only sound was chewing and the occasional scrape of a chair against the wood floor. Isabella barely touched her food, just pushed it around her plate, her expression distant, as if she were listening to something no one else could hear. I remember thinking she looked different. Not physically. She was still the same Isabella, same girl who had hugged me in the driveway just hours earlier. But there was a quality about her now, a stillness that wasn't peace. It was more like she had retreated inward, as if a part of her was still trapped in that room, staring at something that shouldn't exist. "I'm going to shower," Minerva announced, pushing her chair back. She picked up her plate, took it to the kitchen, and I heard her climb the stairs. Her steps were heavy, deliberate, as if each one required conscious decision. Orlando cleared his throat. "You two going to be okay?" "I'll be downstairs if you need me." He gestured vaguely toward the basement, where his drums waited. His refuge, the place where he could make enough noise to drown out anything else. "We will," Isabella said, her voice flat. He hesitated, then put his hand on her shoulder. "It wasn't real, Isa. Whatever it was that we saw, there's an explanation, reflection, shadow, something." "Sure," she said. "Something." After he left, we sat in silence. I watched my cousin, waiting for her to say something, anything that would make this make sense. But she just kept staring at her plate, and eventually I got tired of waiting. "Can we watch a movie?" I asked. She blinked as if waking up. Yes, of course. Let's all watch something. Something normal, something..." Her voice trailed off. We ended up in the living room, Minerva joining us after her shower, all of us sprawled on the large sofa. Isabella chose High School Musical too. Something light, something safe, something as far from locked gates and dark silhouettes as possible. But I barely paid attention to the movie. I kept thinking about that waving hand, the long fingers, the way it moved, so deliberate, as if saying, "I see you. I know you see me, and this is only the beginning." "Jen?" Minerva was looking at me. "Are you okay?" "Just tired," I lied. "Do you want to go to bed?" I shook my head. The idea of climbing those stairs, of entering a dark room, of closing my eyes and trusting that when I woke up, the world would still follow the same rules. No. "Not yet. Stay with me," Isabella said suddenly, grabbing my hand. Her fingers were icy. "Stay with me and don't leave me alone, okay?" "Okay," I said, so we stayed. The three of us watching Troy Bolton sing about basketball in summer, pretending this was just another normal night. Just another weekend. From the basement below, distant but audible, came the sound of Orlando's drums. A steady beat, comforting in its regularity. Proof that he was there, that we weren't alone, that we had protection. Except that as I watched Troy on the golf course, while Isabella and Minerva quietly sang along, I noticed something. The hi-hat was wrong, not by much, just slightly out of sync with the movie's music. As if there were two rhythms playing simultaneously, one overlaying the other, and my brain was trying to reconcile the two and failing. "Do you hear that?" I asked. Isabella stopped singing, tilted her head. "Hear what?" "The drums. And then it stopped, completely, mid-beat. We looked at each other. "He probably just took a break," Minerva said. But her hand had found her phone, her fingers already typing a message. We waited. The movie continued. On screen, Troy was surrounded by co-workers singing. The soundtrack drumming continued. But Orlando's drumming, the real physical drumming, remained silent. Minerva's phone received no reply. "I'm going to check," she said, standing up. "No," Isabella grabbed her wrist. "Don't go alone." "Then come with me. All three of us will go," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. The basement door was right off the kitchen at the end of a short hallway. It had been painted a cheerful blue, and there was a faded rock band sticker on it that the previous owner had probably put there. Minerva knocked. "Orlando? Are you okay?" Silence. She knocked again, louder. "Orlando, this isn't funny. Answer." The doorknob turned when she tested it. Unlocked. The door opened onto darkness, the kind of darkness that feels substantial, that feels like it presses back against you when you try to look into it. "The lights," Minerva muttered, fumbling on the wall. She found the switch, clicked it. Nothing happened. "Burnt bulb?" Isabella suggested, but her voice was tight. "All of them?" Minerva clicked the switch repeatedly. Up, down, up, down. The darkness remained untouched. "Orlando!" she yelled down the stairs. "Orlando!" From the dark, a sound. Not Orlando's voice, not footsteps. Something more subtle, like breathing, like wood creaking under weight, like the drag of something heavy being pulled. And then, so suddenly that all of us jumped, the sound of drumming erupted from below. Not a regular beat, a violent mash of sounds. Hi-hat and snare and kick drum all struck simultaneously, repeatedly, as if someone were punching the instruments instead of playing them properly. "What the hell?" Minerva whispered. The cacophony stopped as abruptly as it began. In the silence that followed, we listened. Footsteps, climbing the basement stairs toward us. Slow, deliberate, heavy enough to make each wood step complain. Minerva slammed the door shut. Her hands wrestled with the deadbolt. It was old, stiff, and her fingers were shaking. "Help! Help!" Isabella and I threw ourselves against the door too, our combined weight holding it closed, while Minerva finally managed to turn the bolt. It slid into place with a click that sounded too loud, too final. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs. They stopped. We could hear it breathing on the other side, whatever it was. Deep, wet breaths like lungs full of fluid forcing air out. Then, in a voice that sounded almost like Orlando, but not quite, distorted just enough to make its strangeness crawl up your spine, "Why did you lock the door?" None of us answered. We just pressed ourselves harder against the wood, as if our bodies could somehow reinforce it against whatever waited on the other side. "I just want out. Please open the door. Where is my brother?" Minerva yelled. "What did you do with my brother?" Silence. Then, with a laugh that sounded nothing like a human, "I'm your brother. Don't you recognize me?" The doorknob started turning. Back and forth, testing the bolt. "Come on." Isabella pulled us away. "Come on, we need to get out of here." We ran back to the living room. Minerva grabbed her phone, fingers flying over the screen. No signal. How is there no signal? We had signal 10 minutes ago. "The landline," Isabella said. "In the kitchen, there's a landline. But to get to the kitchen, we would have to pass the basement door. And as we stood there, frozen, trying to decide, we heard it. The door opening. The bolt didn't hold. Or maybe it did, and the thing simply didn't care, simply passed through the wood as if it were mist. Heavy footsteps in the hallway, coming toward us. "Upstairs," Minerva whispered. "Let's go upstairs, lock ourselves in a room, wait until morning." We ran. I'd never climbed those stairs so fast. My legs burning, my heart thundering in my ears. Minerva and Isabella were ahead of me, pulling me along and behind us. Behind us, the footsteps quickened. We reached the top. Isabella dragged me down the hallway into her room, and Minerva slammed the door shut behind us and locked it. This time the bolt was newer, stronger. This time it held. For now. We stood there panting, staring at the door, waiting for it to burst open, waiting for the thing to follow us. But the footsteps stopped. Just stopped somewhere in the hallway, and then nothing. "Where is it?" Isabella whispered. "I don't know. I don't know. I don't know." Minerva was crying, tears streaming down her face as she tried dialing the phone again. "Please work. Please, please, please." I moved to the window, pulled the curtain aside and looked out. Onto the driveway where Orlando's car was still parked, where the gate was closed, where everything looked so peaceful and normal in the moonlight. And then I saw him. Down below on the porch, directly beneath Isabella's bedroom window, Orlando. He stood there looking up, staring right at me. Even in the darkness, I could see he was crying. His face contorted in panic or pain or both. He raised his hands, beating at the air as if hitting invisible glass, his mouth moving, yelling silent words that I couldn't hear through the closed window. "Orlando," I said. "Orlando is out there." Minerva and Isabella ran to the window. "Look down." "What the hell?" Minerva said. "What the hell? How did he get out?" "The door is locked. How did he—" Orlando kept beating, his mouth forming what looked like, "Let me in, please, it's out here." And then something took him. Something we couldn't see grabbed him from behind and pulled him away from the porch, into the darkness of the side yard. He struggled. We could see his arms flailing, his feet dragging on the lawn, but whatever had him was stronger. Much stronger. He disappeared into the shadows beneath the trees. Isabella was screaming. Minerva was screaming. I just stood there, hand pressed against the cold glass, watching the place where my cousin had been a second ago, and now there was just empty grass and moonlight. 3 knocks on the door made all of us turn, and then a voice, Orlando's voice. Clear and close, "Girls, let me in." "Why did you lock the door?" Minerva looked at Isabella. Isabella looked at me. None of us moved. "It's just me. I promise. Let me in, please. Something is wrong with this house. We need to get out of here." "Prove it," Isabella said, her voice shaking. "Prove that it's you." Pause. Then, "How am I going to prove it?" "It's me. Who else would it be?" "Tell us something," Minerva said. "Something only you would know." Another pause, longer this time. Then the voice said, "When you were 8, Minerva, you stole money from Mom's wallet to buy candy. $20. You made me promise not to tell." "I never told." Minerva paled. "How Nobody knew that, nobody. Because it's me, the voice said. And it sounded so relieved, so genuinely relieved. Now please open the door. Minerva's hand moved to the deadbolt. No, I said. My voice came out louder than I intended. Don't open it. Jen, it's him. You heard, we saw him, I said. We just saw him get dragged into the yard. So how is he here? Silence from the hallway. Then in the same comforting voice, you imagined it. You're scared. You're seeing things. But I'm fine, I'm right here, just open the door. What's our grandmother's name? Isabella challenged suddenly. You said to prove yourself. What is Grandma's name? Maria, the voice answered immediately. Maria Santos, immediately. Maria Santos. She died last year, cancer. Please, this is ridiculous. Just, her name was Maria, Minerva whispered. He's right. Or this thing is inside his head, Isabella said. Or it can read minds or... Bang, the door shuddered in the frame. It wasn't a knock. It was an impact, as if something heavy had thrown itself against it. Bang. Again. Harder. The wood cracked near the top hinge. Get out of the way. The voice no longer sounded like Orlando. It didn't sound like anything human. It was multiple voices layered, bass and high-pitched, and something growling underneath both. Get out of the way, something started scratching the door. Not human fingers, claws, long enough to dig deep grooves into the wood, tearing out splinters that fell onto the hallway rug. The window, I said. We can climb out the window. It's too high, Minerva said, but she was already moving toward it, already knowing we had no choice. Isabella opened it. The night air rushed in, bringing the smell of pine and something else, something sweet and rotten like decaying fruit. Bang! The top hinge broke free completely. The door hung at an angle now, held only by two hinges, and through the gap at the top we could see fingers, but wrong. Two jointed with extra knuckles, the nails long and yellow and sharp like needles. They fumbled through the opening, searching, probing. Go! Minerva pushed me toward the window. Jan, go! But before I could move, the lights went out. All of them. The entire house plunged into darkness so complete, you could have felt it against your skin. And in the dark, we heard the door fall. We heard footsteps enter the room. We heard breathing, that wet, sickly breathing, circling, searching. Isabella's hand found mine, squeezed. Don't move, her grip said. Don't make a sound. We stayed frozen. 3 statues in a dark room, while something moved among us so close I could feel the displacement of air as it passed. So close I could smell that sweet, rotten odor emanating from it. My phone was in my pocket. It had a flashlight, but turning it on would mean revealing where we were, and every instinct screamed to stay quiet, stay still. Maybe it will leave us alone if we stay very, very quiet. The thing stopped, directly between Isabella and me. I could hear it breathing above our heads, its breath skimming the top of my hair, and then, in a voice that sounded exactly like my mother who was miles away safely in her own home, it said, Genesis, sweetheart. Why are you so scared? It's just me. Mommy's here. My knees almost buckled, tears gushed, hot and instantaneous, because I wanted it to be her. I wanted so desperately for it to somehow, impossibly be my mother, that she had come to save me. It's not her, Isabella whispered beside me. Jen, it's not her. But she sounds so real, I said, my voice breaking. I know, but it's not. The thing that sounded like my mother laughed. It was the most horrific laugh I had ever heard, because it was perfect. It was exactly how my mother laughed when I said something silly, that affectionate, gentle laugh, and hearing it come out of this thing in a dark room as it hunted was like having my heart ripped out and stomped on. You were always a clever girl, it said. Come, Mommy's going to take you home. Something touched my shoulder, icy, damp, fingers too long with too many joints. I screamed. I couldn't help it. It just came out, loud and sharp and full of every drop of terror that had been damming up. The lights came on, and there was nothing there. Just the 3 of us. Isabella holding me. Minerva against the wall, phone clutched like a weapon. The bedroom door hanging broken. But the room was empty. Where? Minerva began. From downstairs we heard the front door open. Footsteps crossed the entrance hall. Then voices, multiple, arguing, worried. Girls, Uncle David's voice. Girls, where are you? We ran. We flew down those stairs faster than safe, stumbling, grabbing the banister. And there they were. Uncle David and Aunt Rachel still in their travel clothes, looking around confused and alarmed. What happened here? Uncle David looked at the dining room chairs pushed aside, at the plates still on the table. Why was the door unlocked? Where is Orlando? Minerva tried to explain, but the words wouldn't come out. There's something in the house. There's something wrong with this house. Aunt Rachel saw me, saw my face, and she knew. Whatever I looked like, whatever my face showed, it made her pull me into her arms and whisper, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry," into my hair repeatedly. Uncle David searched the house. Searched every room, every closet, the basement, the attic. Called for Orlando. Called Orlando's cell phone, and from somewhere in the yard they heard it ring and found it on the lawn, cracked screen, dead battery. But they didn't find Orlando. Not that night. It was only when the sun came up, when the morning light finally washed the house and made it look normal again, ordinary again, that Orlando was found. Sleeping in his car, locked inside, keys in the ignition, as if he had gotten in there for safety and just collapsed. He didn't remember anything after going down to the basement. Didn't remember playing the drums. Didn't remember coming up. Just woke up in the car when Uncle David knocked on the window, confused and disoriented, asking why everyone was acting so strange. No scratches. No injuries. No explanation. And when we asked, when Minerva confronted him, demanded to know what had happened, he just shook his head. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. "I went down to the basement to play, then I woke up in the car. The rest is all black." But his eyes said otherwise. His eyes said he remembered perfectly and would never talk about it ever, because some memories are too big to fit into words. We should have left. We should have packed up right then and there, left everything behind, gone back to the city. But my aunt and uncle were exhausted from the drive, and it was still Saturday morning, and Uncle David was in denial the way only stubborn men can be, insisting there had to be a logical explanation, that we had just scared ourselves, that maybe a gas leak or... "It wasn't a gas leak," Minerva said flatly. "Dad, we saw it. All of us saw it." "I saw shadows," he retorted. "Saw reflections. It's an old house, it creaks, it makes noises." "David," Aunt Rachel said quietly. "Stop." He looked at her and something passed between them, one of those marital understandings. "It's happened before," Aunt Rachel continued. "You know it has. Pretending doesn't help." "Not here," he said. "I thought here would be different. The real estate agent said the previous family left because of work, not because of..." "They lied," Orlando said. He sat at the kitchen table, untouched coffee cooling in front of him. "People always lie about these things, because who's going to believe the truth?" That was the first time I heard him acknowledge it. The first time any of them directly acknowledged that this, whatever this was real and persistent and followed them. "We'll stay one more day," Uncle David decided. "Until tomorrow morning, we'll all stay together, lights on, and Monday I'm calling a priest or someone who understands these things." "A priest won't help," Orlando said. "We've tried priests. Then what?" Uncle David was starting to sound desperate. "What do you want me to do? Tell your mother we have to move again, find another house, start over, and hope this time it's different? We spent every dime we had on this place." Silence fell. The kind of silence that happens when the truth is too ugly to look at directly. Eventually, Aunt Rachel said, "I'll call Genesis's mom. She should go home." "No," I said. I surprised myself with how firm my voice came out. "I want to stay." It wasn't true. I didn't want to stay at all. I wanted to be miles away, in my own bed with my mother sleeping in the next room, and my brother making video game noises through the wall. But Isabella and Minerva had remained in the living room, too quiet, too small, and I knew that if I left, I would have failed them somehow. That some loyalties run deeper than fear. Aunt Rachel studied me, then nodded slowly. "All right, but you stay with your aunt and uncle. Don't leave our sight." The rest of the morning passed in a strange simulation of normalcy. Orlando went to take a nap. Minerva and Uncle David started cleaning up the mess from the night before. Aunt Rachel cooked breakfast, pancakes and bacon, the smell filling the house. Trying to mask that underlying sweet rotten smell that seemed to cling to the corners, Isabella and I stayed together, mostly in silence. She kept looking at me as if she wanted to say something, but each time she opened her mouth, she changed her mind. It was only when we were alone in the backyard, sent outside to get some fresh air, that she finally spoke. You felt it touch you, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes. And it sounded like your mom. Yes. She picked up a stick from the ground, started peeling the bark into long strips. For me, it sounded like my grandma, the one who died. She said, her voice cracked, said she had missed me, that she had come to take me. I looked at my cousin, 14, still a child really, trying to be brave, and understood that we had crossed some kind of threshold. We weren't just cousins anymore. We were survivors of something, bound by it the way only shared trauma can bind people. Do you think it will happen again? I asked. Tonight? I know it will, she said. It always does. We build. Then there's one night where something breaks through and then it calms down for a while. Like tides, like cycles. Do your parents know this? They know. But what can they do? They spent everything here. Oh, but what can they do? They spent everything here. And anyway, it always follows us. Always has, so where could we go where we would be truly safe? I didn't have an answer to that. Jen, she said, facing me. If tonight gets bad, I mean really bad, you run. Don't wait for me or Minerva or anyone. Just run, okay? Go to the road, flag down a car, go back to your mum. I won't leave you. Promise. Issa. Promise. Okay, I lied. I promise. She nodded, satisfied, and we went back to peeling the stick in silence. But I knew even then that I wouldn't keep that promise. I knew that when it came down to it, and I felt in my gut that it would, I would stay, because that's what love means. That's what family means. Even when family means staying in a house that wants to devour you. In the afternoon, Isabella's friend arrived. Jenny, tall girl with black hair and lots of bracelets, always laughing too loud at things that weren't that funny. They had planned this for weeks, sleepover, movies, gossiping about boys from school. No one told Jenny about the night before. Aunt Rachel suggested cancelling, but Isabella begged, please, I just want one normal night, just one, and eventually they gave in. But you stay in the living room, Uncle David instructed, where we can see you, and no horror movies. I promise, Isabella said, and this time it sounded sincere. Jenny came with a backpack and a sleeping bag, completely unaware of the tension that ran through the house like electricity through wires. She was cheerfulness and energy, chattering about some school drama. And for a few hours her presence almost made things seem normal. Almost. We ordered pizza, set up camp in the living room, piles of blankets and pillows. Aunt Rachel and Uncle David stayed upstairs, bedroom door open, television playing softly. Orlando was in his room, the downstairs one near the living room, also with the door open, playing video games with the sound loud enough to be comforting. We were surrounded, protected, safe, or so we tried to believe. High School Musical 2 was playing on TV. Jenny and Isabella were singing along. Minerva managed a half smile, relaxing a little for the first time all day. I even managed to eat a slice of pizza, my stomach finally letting something other than fear in. It was during Bet on It, Troy on the golf course, angsty and singing, that I noticed. The sound of drumming, distant, coming from the basement, but Orlando was in his room. We could clearly hear the sounds of explosions and gunfire from his video game. So who was playing the drums? I looked at Minerva. She was already looking at me, fingers paused mid-reach for another slice of pizza. Isabella stopped singing. Even Jenny noticed something was wrong by the way we all froze. What is it? Jenny asked. Nothing, Isabella said too quickly. Just, Jen, can you go see if Orlando wants pizza? There's still a bunch. She was giving me an out, an excuse to check if he was really in his room. I'll go with you, Minerva said, getting up. Me too, Isabella added. Guys, it's just pizza, Jenny laughed nervously. You're being weird. We walked the few feet to Orlando's room. The door was ajar, light spilling out. Inside, he was sitting on his bed, controller in his hands, completely engrossed in the game. Want some pizza? Minerva called. No, I ate earlier, thanks. He didn't even look up. Completely normal, completely present. From the basement, the sound of drumming continued. Not loud, just that persistent hi-hat, out of sync with the movie soundtrack. Do you hear that? I asked Orlando. Hear what? The drums. He finally paused the game. Listened, his brow furrowed. Probably just from the movie. It's not from the movie. He put the controller aside, stood up, and in that moment, just for a second, I saw something cross his face. Recognition, fear. Then it was gone, replaced by that mask of calm he wore so well. "I'll check," he said. "No," Minerva held him back. "Please don't go down there. I have to know if there's someone in the house." "There isn't. You know there isn't anyone." They stared at each other, brother and sister, both perfectly understanding what was implied. "Then what do we do?" he asked. "Do we pretend we don't hear it?" "Yes," Isabella said. "That's exactly what we do, because that was their philosophy. The unwritten rule they lived by. Ignore, don't engage. Maybe it will go away if you don't give it attention. But it was too late for that. I think we knew it. All of us knew it. The house had already decided. It had already marked us. And tonight, the second night, would be when the bill came due. We returned to the living room. Jenny looked at us confused. "You guys are so weird," she said, but she was smiling, thinking it was some inside joke she didn't get. If only. The movie continued. The drumming continued too, that persistent wrong rhythm that scraped at the edges of my consciousness like sandpaper. I tried to focus on the screen, on the bright colors and smiling faces, but I kept drifting. My attention pulled back to that sound. It was Jenny who finally said it out loud. "Seriously, what is that noise? It's driving me crazy." "What noise?" Isabella tried. "Like drums or someone banging, don't you hear it?" We looked at each other. The secret was crumbling. We couldn't keep her in the dark anymore. "It's just the pipes," Minerva lied. "Old house. Pipes don't sound like that." And then, as if it were waiting for that acknowledgement, the drumming stopped. Complete silence for 3 heartbeats. Then from the backyard, through the kitchen door that led to the patio, we heard it. Barks. A dog barking. Not aggressive, not scared, just barking. The kind of bark a dog makes when it wants attention, when it wants to be let in. Isabella paled. Literally, I saw the color drain from her face like water going down a sink. "No," she whispered. "No, no, 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 no." "What is it?" Jenny asked. "Do you have a dog?" "We did," Minerva said quietly. "Dulce. She died last month." The barking continued, familiar, unmistakable. The high-pitched, insistent bark of a small poodle they had owned since Isabella was little, who had died of old age in Isabella's bed while she held her, whose ashes had been cremated and scattered beneath her favorite tree in the yard of the old house. "This is sick," Jenny said, standing up. "Someone is messing with you. Someone is out there with a recording or—" "Sit down," Isabella commanded, her voice strangely flat. "Jenny, please sit down." "No, I'm going to go see." "You are not going." Isabella grabbed Jenny's arm, holding her in place. "You are not going out there. Nobody is. Let go of me. What the hell, Isa? You're hurting me." The barks grew louder, more urgent. That scratching sound, nails against wood, as if Dulce were at the back door, asking, begging to be let in. Then we heard the door open. That characteristic metal-on-concrete creak that the heavy back door made, the one in the kitchen, the one we were sure, absolutely sure, was locked. The barking stopped. We froze. 4 girls in the living room, staring toward the kitchen, waiting. Footsteps, not human, the click-click-click of dog nails on linoleum floor crossing the kitchen, coming toward us. "Uncle David," I screamed. My voice came out shrill, full of panic. "Uncle David!" Sound of running from upstairs, door opening. Heavy footsteps on the stairs. But the dog footsteps reached the living room entrance first. And then, nothing. No dog appeared. Just the sounds of footsteps, stopped right at the threshold, as if something was standing there, invisible, waiting. Uncle David burst into the living room, Aunt Rachel right behind him. "What is it? What happened?" "The back door," Minerva said. "Something came in." He didn't argue, didn't ask for an explanation, just grabbed the bat he kept near the front. Door baseball bat, solid wood, and marched toward the kitchen. We heard him rummage, open cabinets, check the back door. "It's locked," he yelled back. "Totally locked, nothing could have gotten in." "But we heard it." Jenny was almost crying now. "We all heard it. It opened. Something came in." Aunt Rachel moved closer to us, eyes scanning our faces, reading the terror there, understanding that we weren't exaggerating, that we weren't imagining. "David," she called, "come back here. Just one more minute. I'm going to check the..." Crash, the sound of dishes, plates, glasses, everything exploding against the kitchen floor. Not falling, not accidentally knocked over, being thrown with force, with anger. Then silence. "David?" Aunt Rachel called, her voice breaking. "David!" He appeared in the kitchen doorway, white face, wide eyes, bat dropped, forgotten on the kitchen floor. "We're leaving," he said. "Now, everyone, get shoes, get in the car, we're going." "What did you see?" Aunt Rachel whispered. "Now." He roared, and never, never in my whole life had I heard Uncle David scream like that. We moved. Jenny was crying openly. Isabella guided her, arm around her shoulders. Minerva grabbed phones, wallets. Aunt Rachel took my hand. Orlando appeared from his room. "What's going on?" "We're leaving," Uncle David said. "No questions, just come." We moved toward the front door. Uncle David reached for the knob. Locked. "What the hell?" he muttered, wrestling with it. "I didn't lock this, I didn't lock it." Tried the electronic lock. Dead. Tried the remote. Nothing. "Window," Orlando said, moving toward the large living room picture window. It didn't open. Painted shut or swollen or just wouldn't open. "Back door," Aunt Rachel suggested. But none of us wanted to go back there. None of us wanted to go into that kitchen where broken dishes lay all over the floor, and something had made Uncle David, a Navy veteran who had faced things he never talked about, look so completely terrified. "The upstairs windows," Minerva said. "We can break one, climb down." We started moving toward the stairs, and that's when the lights went out. All of them. Again. Total, complete darkness, the kind that feels solid, that seems to have weight and texture. Jenny screamed. Someone bumped into me. Phones flickered on, multiple screen flashlights cutting through the dark. In the fragmented, bouncing light I saw the dining room, the long table, and underneath it, something moving, large, contorting, as it was squeezing out from underneath even though it shouldn't have fit, as it was pulling its impossible bulk through a space too small. "Run," Uncle David said. He didn't yell, just said it low and tight. "Run? Now? Run where?" Every exit was locked, every window sealed. We were trapped like rats in a cage, and the thing under the table was finishing pulling itself out, was standing up, I saw the horns, even in the darkness, even with just that phone light. I saw them long, curved, like a wild ram, but bigger, much bigger, coming out of a head that was the wrong shape, that bent at angles it shouldn't. I made a mistake then. I looked at it directly. The creature, the entity, whatever it was. I looked into its eyes, and it looked back. I can't adequately describe what I saw in those eyes. I don't have the words for it. It was like looking down a well that had no bottom, that fell forever. And at the bottom of that well was something so vast and cold and fundamentally hostile to life that my mind tried to shut down rather than process it. The thing smiled. It had too many teeth, rows upon rows going down what should be a throat, but looked more like a hole that led nowhere and everywhere simultaneously. It moved toward us. It didn't walk, it moved, as if the space between us was suggestion rather than fact, as if it could simply decide to be closer, and so it would be. Uncle David pushed us back, placing himself between us and it. Aunt Rachel was praying, quick whispered words in Spanish, prayers I didn't know she knew. And then Orlando did something inexplicable. He walked toward it. "No." Minerva grabbed his arm, but he shook her off. "Someone has to be it," he said. His voice sounded strange, distant, as if he were in a trance. "It has to choose someone or it never stops. It's always like this. Orlando, don't..." But he kept walking right up to that thing with its impossible horns and its contorted body and its infinite well eyes. He stopped a yard away from it. The creature leaned down, lowered itself until its face, if you could call it a face, was level with his. It studied him, tilted its head sideways like a bird considering a worm. Then it recoiled, simply recoiled, sliding back into the darkness beneath the dining room table. The lights came on. The front door was unlocked. We could hear the click of the mechanism releasing. And Orlando was on his knees on the floor weeping. Deep, painful sobs that sounded like something breaking inside him. Uncle David scooped him up. Carried him. 20 years old, 6 feet tall, but his father carried him like a baby. "Go," he shouted to us. "Get to the car." We went. Stumbled out the front door, across the porch, down the steps. Uncle David's car was in the driveway, unlocked. Keys still in the ignition, because he always left it that way when he was home. We piled inside. Aunt Rachel at the wheel. Uncle David putting Orlando in the back seat. Minerva and Isabella on either side of him. Jenny and I in the third row, clutching each other. The engine caught on the first crank, a small mercy. Aunt Rachel floored it, tires squealing on gravel, and we sped down that driveway like the devil was behind us. Maybe he was. I looked out the back window as we left. The house grew smaller in the distance, its lit windows looking warm and inviting. Inviting. You could see the living room through the large window, the blankets and pillows still scattered where we had been watching the movie. It looked completely normal. It looked like nothing had happened, and on the front porch, standing motionless, was a figure. Very tall, very thin, with curved horns silhouetted against the house light. It waved slowly, deliberately, then it stepped back inside. We went to a hotel, a cheap place off the highway, the kind with harsh fluorescent lighting and a smell of old disinfectant. We took 2 rooms, one for the adults and Orlando, one for us girls. Aunt Rachel drove Jenny home first, Jenny's. Mom was furious. It was almost midnight, but Aunt Rachel explained there had been an emergency situation and left it at that. Jenny looked back as her mother led her away, eyes still wide with shock. And I knew we would never speak of it again, that she would bury it deep inside, let it calcify into something she could convince herself was a nightmare or an elaborate prank. What a luxury that must have been, to be able to choose not to believe. In the hotel room, Isabella and Minerva and I stayed awake even with the lights out. We just lay there on the queen-sized bed where we were all huddled, not talking, not sleeping. It was Minerva who finally broke the silence. "He offered himself," she said. "Orlando. He offered himself instead of us." "Offered what?" I asked, though I felt I already knew. "I don't know, but something. He gave it something. That's why it let us go." Isabella was crying silently, tears soaking her pillow. "Why did he do that?" "Why does he always do that?" "Because he's the oldest," Minerva said. "Because he thinks he has to protect us." I thought about the Orlando I knew. Funny kind, who always made sure I had an extra helping of dessert, who taught me to play a basic beat on his drums, who one summer built a treehouse with me, even though he was too old to really care about treehouses. I thought about his eyes in that moment when he walked toward the creature. That resignation, as if he had always known it would come to this eventually. "Is he going to be okay?" I asked. Neither of them answered, because they didn't know. Because even accustomed to this, to living with the impossible, to making deals with things that shouldn't exist, it had never gone this far before. It had never been so direct. I fell asleep eventually, exhaustion finally winning over fear. I dreamed of long hallways and doors that opened into more doors, and somewhere distant, someone was playing the drums. And it sounded like sobs, like a broken heart, like a goodbye. I woke up to sunlight streaming through the thin hotel curtains. Minerva and Isabella were still sleeping, huddled together, fingers intertwined even in sleep. There was a voice from the next room, low but urgent. "Uncle David." I crept out of bed, pressed my ear against the wall. "Dad, I don't know what to do. We can't go back there. We can't stay here forever. And Orlando," his voice cracked. "You didn't see him, Rachel. You didn't see what that thing did to him. He's sleeping," Aunt Rachel said. "He's resting. He'll be fine." "No, he won't. You know he won't." Silence, then the sound of crying. Uncle David, always so strong, always so controlled, weeping like a child. "What am I doing wrong?" he sobbed. "What did I do to bring this on my family? My children, my babies. What did I do?" "Nothing," Aunt Rachel said firmly. "You didn't do anything. It's not your fault." It never was. "Then why? Why us? Why always us?" I didn't hear her answer. Maybe she didn't have one. Maybe some questions don't have answers that make sense in human terms. I went back to bed. looked at my sleeping cousins, thought about Orlando in the next room, whatever was left of him after that encounter. And I understood in that moment of horrible clarity that this would never end. Not for them. Wherever they went, whatever they did, that thing, that presence would follow them. Because it wasn't interested in houses, it was interested in them. It had chosen them for reasons we would never understand, and a choice like that doesn't just undo itself by changing your address. Some of us carry our ghosts inside, and some ghosts decide to move in. We didn't go back to the house on Miro Creek Road, ever. Uncle David hired a moving company to pack everything, paid to borrow the truck. They lost horrible money on the sale. The house foreclosed again within months, the next buyers also fleeing. I heard the place burned down eventually. Electrical fire, they said. But Minerva told me the truth years later. It was Uncle David. He went back in the middle of the night with a can of gasoline and burned it to the ground. Police never caught him. No one investigated too heavily. It was his property after all. Some places are better off as ashes. My mum picked me up from the hotel that Sunday morning. She cried when she saw me, held me so tight it hurt, held on and didn't let go for a long time. Never again, she said. You never stay there again. I don't care what your aunt says, what the girls say. Never again. And I never did. I still saw my cousins, of course. Family lunches, birthdays, but always on neutral ground, always in public, always in broad daylight. And there was always this unspoken thing between us, this shared knowledge that set us apart from the rest of the family. Orlando changed, not dramatically, not in ways other people would notice, but he was quieter, more distant, as if part of him had been left behind in that house, or perhaps part of something else had come with him when he left. He died 3 months later. Officially heart failure, sudden attack. He was 20, perfectly healthy, with no history of heart problems. I didn't go to the funeral. Told my mom I was too upset, which was true. But the real truth was that I was scared. Scared that if I went, if I looked in the casket, I would see something looking back that wasn't completely Orlando anymore. Minerva told me afterward that when they found him, collapsed in his dorm room, roommate sleeping feet away without hearing anything, there was an expression on his face, relief, as if finally, it was over. Years passed. I went to college, studied computer science because numbers make sense, because code does exactly what you tell it to do, because in that world, there is no room for things that shouldn't exist. I became a careful person, controlled, avoided old houses, avoided places with too many shadows, checked locks multiple times, slept with hallway lights on even in my mid-20s. Therapy helped, anxiety medication helped, time helped, but it never completely erased, never forgot. How could I? Aunt Rachel and Uncle David divorced when Minerva was in college. Not loudly, just drifted apart. Amicable separation, they said. But I knew it was because Uncle David couldn't look at her anymore without seeing what they failed to protect. And she couldn't look at him without seeing the man who had burned a house to the ground in a helpless act of defiance. Minerva became a paramedic. Isabella, a middle school teacher. Both chose professions about helping people, about making a tangible difference, as if they could somehow balance the scale of what they had experienced. We rarely talked about it, maybe once a year. Usually late at night after too much wine, one of us would mention it. Remember the house? And the other would nod and we would sit in silence, and that would be enough. Until last week. Until Minerva's letter. Until the photograph that showed a different house, but the same expression in her eyes. That recognition. That terror. It's happening again. And now I'm in my car driving back to Ashford for the first time in 16 years. Because if it's happening again, if that thing, that choice didn't die with Orlando, if it still hunts them, then maybe it's time to stop running. Maybe it's time to finally understand. Or maybe, and this is what really terrifies me, maybe I always knew deep down that it wasn't over. That it never ended. That night on Miro Creek Road wasn't an ending. It was an invitation. And now, 16 years later, I'm finally accepting. Minerva's house is in the Portland suburbs. Nice place, quiet street. The kind of place where kids ride bikes and neighbors wave. She's waiting on the porch when I arrive. Older, obviously. 32 now, fine lines around her eyes, hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. But the eyes are the same. Still those eyes that have seen far more than they should have. You came, she says, and in her voice I hear relief and dread mixed. Said I would. We go inside. The house is clean, organized, completely normal. Photos on the wall. Minerva and her girlfriend, dogs, beach vacations. A life she built despite everything. We sit at the kitchen table. She slides an envelope toward me. It started 3 months ago. Small things at first. Objects moving, sounds. I thought I was imagining it. And now? Now there's no denying it. She opens the envelope. Inside are more photographs. All taken in her house. In all of them, something is wrong. A shadow in a corner that doesn't match the light sources. A reflection in a mirror showing something that isn't actually in the room. And in one, taken by her girlfriend of Minerva sleeping, there is a figure standing at the foot of the bed. Tall. Thin. With a suggestion of horns that could be a trick of the light. It could be, but it isn't. Camilla doesn't know, Minerva says. My girlfriend. She thinks I'm stressed, that I'm seeing things. How do I tell her? How do I explain? You can't, I say. People who haven't experienced it. They can't understand. They don't want to understand. So what do I do? She looks so young suddenly. So scared. How do I fight it? And here it is. The question I've been avoiding for 16 years. The question that kept me awake countless nights. The question for which I have no answer. Except maybe I do. Orlando made a deal, I say slowly. That night. He offered himself. I know. And it calmed down. For years it calmed down. But now it's back. Because the payment is over, Minerva whispers. Because whatever he promised, it wasn't enough. Or his time ran out. I look at the photographs scattered on the table. All those glimpses of something peering from the edges of reality. I think I need to go back, I say, to where it started. The house burned down. Not the house, the place. There's still the land. There has to be something there. Some clue about what this is, why it chose your family. Minerva looks at me for a long time. Then she nods. I'm coming with you. You don't have to. Yes, I do. It's my family. My brother. My responsibility. What about Isabella? Something crosses her face. Isabella has 2 kids now. A husband. A good life. I'm not dragging her back into this unless I have to. But we both know that eventually she will have to. Because if it's happening to Minerva, eventually it will happen to Isabella too. And to anyone they carry. Children, partners, anyone close enough to be touched by the choice. Some curses don't respect generations. We drive to Ashford the next morning. 2 cars, in case one of us needs to get away fast. Planning born of experience. Mirrow Creek Road looks different in the daylight. The trees have grown denser. The road is broken, rarely used. Of the 3 properties it served, 2 are abandoned. The third has a for sale sign that looks like it's been there for years. And at the end, where Uncle David's house stood, there is only a burned foundation and weeds growing through cracked concrete. We get out of the cars. The air is quiet, too quiet, no birds, no insects, just silence that seems to be waiting. Do you feel it? Minerva asks. I feel it. That familiar old sensation of being watched, of being in a place that doesn't want you, but will tolerate your presence for now. We walk through the ruin. Pieces of blackened walls are still standing, door frames leading to nothing, a burned staircase going up to empty air, and in the center, where the dining room would have been, there is a hole. Not a hole from the fire, a hole in the foundation itself. As if something had burrowed out from underneath, creating a depression that goes down beyond where there should be space for it. This wasn't here, Minerva says. When Dad burned the place, this wasn't here. We approach the edge. Look down, dark, there is no visible bottom. Just blackness that seems to swallow light, rather than simply the absence of it. And from down there, so faint we almost imagine it, comes a sound. Drums. That familiar hi-hat, out of rhythm, persistent. Orlando, Minerva whispers and starts to climb down. No, I grab her arm. You can't go down there. If he's down there, he's not. Orlando died 16 years ago. Whatever is playing those drums is not your brother. She knows I'm right. I see it in her eyes. But the desperation to want to believe otherwise is there too. Then what do we do, she asks. How do we stop it? And it's then that I understand. Really understand for the first time. We can't, I say. We never could. It's not about fighting or negotiating or understanding. It's about choice. What choice? Orlando chose to carry it for you, for a time. But the burden eventually gets too heavy. Then it passes. To the next person, to the next generation. So am I doomed? My nephews? This never ends? I look at the hole, at the darkness waiting. At the foundation of the house, we thought we had escaped, but that had always been with us, just waiting beneath the surface. There's another choice, I say slowly. The one Uncle David never wanted to make. The one Orlando tried to spare you from. Which one? Stop running. Stop pretending it doesn't exist. Acknowledge it. I take a deep breath. Give it a name. I don't understand. Your father always said, you can't fight what you don't understand. But what if fighting isn't the point? What if the point is coexistence? Minerva looks at me as if I've gone crazy. Maybe I have. You're suggesting we live with that? Your family always has lived with it. They just never admitted it, never looked at it directly. And that denial, I think that's what feeds it, the fear. The refusal to see. From the hole, the sound of drumming gets louder, as if in agreement. As if it's been waiting for us to figure this out for years. I take a step forward. Closer to the edge. I see you, I say out loud. I know you're there. I know you always have been. Minerva grabs me. Jen, don't provoke it. I'm not provoking it. I'm acknowledging it. I look down into that darkness. You chose this family. I don't know why. Maybe I never will, but you chose them. And they've spent decades running, denying, trying to escape. And that hasn't worked. It never will. Silence. Even the drumming stopped. Then from inside the hole, something starts rising. Not climbing, rising, as if the darkness were solidifying, taking shape, pulling itself up from the depths. I want to run. Every instinct screams to run. But I stay. And when the thing emerges, when those horns appear over the edge, when that wrong-shaped face turns toward me, I don't look away. I meet its eyes. Those infinite well eyes. And this time I don't let my mind flee. I force it to look, to see, to understand as much as a human mind can understand something so fundamentally. And families like Uncle David's, those with cracks, with trauma, with generations of unprocessed pain, are easier to anchor to, because they are already half open. They already have holes where something can get in. I understand, I whisper. You are alone. You need this. The creature leans closer. Its breath is cold on my face. It smells of damp earth and metal and something indefinable. But Orlando wasn't yours, I continue. He was borrowed, for a time, and now the time is up. It doesn't speak. But I feel the answer anyway, pressing against my mind like fingers against glass. Always up, always need more. Then take something different, I say. Not life, not choice, something smaller. How? And I have an idea, crazy, impossible. But all the best ideas are memories, I say. Take the memories, the bad ones, the ones that haunt them. Take the trauma and leave the family in peace. The creature considers. I can feel thought in it like pressure shifting, like weather before a storm. Then in a voice that is wind and whispers, and the creak of old trees you offer for all who want it, for all who choose it. No force, no tricks, real choice, and if they refuse, then you wait. You watch, but you don't hunt, you don't drag, you don't take. Why would I agree? Because loneliness recognizes loneliness, I say softly. And I recognize you. I see you, and I'm telling you that you don't have to be alone this way. There's another way. Long silence. So long that I think I've failed. I think it's going to take me. Take us, finish what it started 16 years ago. Then it recoils, slides back into the hole. But before it disappears completely, it speaks one more time. Bring them. Those who want to forget, bring them at sunset. I will bring what I took in exchange. And then it is gone. Just like that, the darkness in the hole seems less dense. The air feels less heavy. And from somewhere distant, maybe imagined, maybe not, I hear laughter. Not cruel, just surprised. As if after all of eternity, something finally changed. It takes 3 days to gather everyone. Minerva, Isabella, Aunt Rachel. Even Uncle David, reluctant but finally agreeing. We tell them what we found. What I offered, the choice. You're crazy, Uncle David says. Negotiating with that thing? It's not negotiating, I answer. It's acknowledgement. It's giving it what it needs on terms that we can survive. What if it's a trick? Then we run, like you've always run, but this time, at least we tried something different. Isabella holds my hand. I want to forget, she says quietly. If I can, if it's real, I want to forget that night. I want my kids to never have to know. One by one, they agree. We return at sunset on the third day. All of us standing around that burned foundation, that dark hole. We wait, and when the sun touches the horizon, when the light turns golden and strange, it comes. Not terrifying this time, just present. Solid in a way it wasn't before, as if by acknowledging it, we gave it more defined shape. It extends a hand, if you can call it a hand. Fingers too long, too many joints, but the gesture is undeniable. Aunt Rachel goes first, touches those fingers, closes her eyes, and when she opens them again, there is confusion there. Where are we? Why are we here? Just a drive, Minerva says gently. We're going home soon. One by one, they do the same. Uncle David, Isabella, Minerva, each one touches. Each one forgets, and in exchange, the creature gives something back. Small things. To Minerva, a ring that Orlando used to wear. To Isabella, a photo she thought she had lost. To Uncle David, a keychain from the old house, the one before all this started. Memories, but good ones. Without poison, without trauma, a fair trade. Finally, I'm alone with it. You do not want to forget? The creature asks. No, I say. Someone has to remember. Someone has to bear witness. Why? Because then it means something. It's not just horror. It's an encounter between your world and ours. And if no one remembers, it was just a nightmare. But if I remember, it is history. Yes, it considers. Then, and I swear I'm not making this up, I think it smiles. Really smiles in a way that isn't terrifying but almost grateful. Thank you, it says, for seeing. Thank you for letting us, I reply, and then it is gone. Back into the darkness, back to wherever it dwells. But it's not gone completely. I can still sense it, on the perimeters, watching. Always watching, but not hunting. Not anymore, so that is how it ends. Not with an exorcism. Not with a dramatic escape. Just with acknowledgement, with testimony, with a deal that both sides can live with. My family doesn't remember. To them, that weekend is a vague blur. Something about a gas leak and a medical emergency. Orlando is just a beloved brother who died young from a heart defect. Sad but not haunted. Only I remember. Only I carry the full weight. But it's okay. It's a choice I made. A burden I accept. And some nights when I sleep I dream of drumming, but it doesn't scare me anymore. It's just a reminder that the world is vaster than we know. That there are things in the spaces between what we see, and that sometimes, just sometimes, we can coexist with the impossible. If we're brave enough to look directly. If we're brave enough to see, this is my story. My testimony. My acknowledgement. If you read this far, thank you. Thank you for seeing with me. Thank you for bearing witness. And if you ever encounter something impossible, something that shouldn't exist but exists anyway, remember, sometimes running is the answer. But sometimes, just sometimes, the answer is to stay, to look, to acknowledge, and to make peace with the darkness. Because it was always there, and always will be. The question is not how to escape. It's how to live despite it. How to find light even knowing the shadow exists. How to love even knowing we will lose. How to keep going even knowing there are things out there, down there, that we will never fully understand. That is real courage, not the absence of fear, but the choice to live in spite of it. And maybe, just maybe, that is enough. If you liked this story, leave your comment below. Tell me, would you have run? Or would you have stayed? Would you have looked the creature in the eyes? And if you've lived something similar, something impossible, you are not alone. There are more of us than you think. People who have seen, who know, who carry the testimony of things the world prefers to pretend don't exist. You are not crazy. You saw it. And that is enough. Subscribe for more stories of the impossible. And until next night.